I sat in the executor's office, my hands folded in my lap. The leather chair felt too big, too cold. My brother Marcus leaned back across from me, his expression calm, almost bored. "It's already settled," he said simply. The executor, Mr. Wallace, nodded and slid a folder across his desk. "The inheritance has been distributed according to the will we received." I blinked. "What do you mean, distributed? I wasn't told about any final meeting." Marcus didn't look at me. My husband Keith shifted in his seat beside me, saying nothing. My mother-in-law Diane sat near the window, her mouth curved into something that looked like a smile. Mr. Wallace cleared his throat. Everything was handled properly. The beneficiaries were notified. My stomach dropped. I'm his daughter. I should have been notified. "You weren't listed," Mr. Wallace said quietly. The room tilted. Marcus examined his nails. Keith stared at the floor. Diane's smile widened just slightly. I couldn't breathe. "That's impossible. Dad wouldn't." Mr. Wallace interrupted gently. "Based on the will we received, everything was divided between your brother and certain charitable organizations." Then he added, almost as an afterthought, "the will that was submitted to us." The parking lot felt like it stretched forever. My legs moved, but I couldn't feel the ground. Marcus walked ahead, keys jangling in his hand. I called after him. "Marcus, wait." He turned, eyebrows raised. "What? How could you do this?" He sighed like I was being difficult. "You should have expected this, honestly. Dad made his choice." Diane caught up to us, her heels clicking on the pavement. "Your father always valued responsibility. You have to understand that." Keith touched my elbow. "Let's just go home. Don't cause a scene here." I pulled away from him. A scene? I just found out I was written out of my father's will and nobody told me. Marcus shrugged. "Maybe if you'd been around more in his final years, things would have been different." That wasn't true. I visited Dad every week. I was there. But nobody corrected him. Keith looked away. Diane nodded like Marcus had said something wise. I realized then, they'd all talked about this already. They knew. They'd rehearsed their lines. I was the only one caught off guard. At home, Keith poured himself coffee and sat at the kitchen table. I stood by the counter, still in my coat. "You're being too emotional about this," he said. "My father just died. I'm allowed to be emotional. But getting this worked up over money, it's not a good look." I stared at him. "It's not about money. It's about being erased." Diane appeared in the doorway. She'd followed us home, uninvited as always. "You're acting ungrateful. Marcus handled everything while you were busy with your own life." "I was there," I said again. "I visited. I helped." "When it was convenient," she replied. Keith nodded along. They began listing my mistakes, times I'd missed calls, a birthday I forgot 3 years ago, a disagreement Dad and I had about selling his old car. None of it justified this. Nobody asked how I felt. Nobody said they were sorry. I went upstairs and sat on the edge of the bed. I remembered something Dad said once, months before he got really sick. We were sitting on his porch, drinking lemonade. "I made sure it couldn't be changed," he'd said. I'd asked what he meant. He just smiled and patted my hand. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the meeting in my head. Mr. Wallace's face. The way his hands fidgeted with the folder. How he avoided looking directly at me. He'd seemed tense. Rushed, even. When he said the will had been submitted, his voice didn't carry the confidence I'd expect from someone handling official estate business. Something felt wrong. I lay there in the dark, listening to Keith snore beside me, and I felt the despair start to shift. Just slightly. Into something quieter. Doubt. Not doubt in my father. Doubt in what I'd been told. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to fight. Not yet. Not loudly. But I wasn't going to accept it either. I got up, made coffee, and went about my day like nothing had changed. Keith seemed relieved. Diane stopped calling every hour. Marcus probably thought I'd given up. But I was just getting started. I waited 3 days before I sent the email. I kept it short and polite. Dear Mr. Wallace, I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to clarify something from our meeting. Which version of my father's will was used for the distribution? Thank you for your time. His reply came within an hour. The most recent one submitted. Submitted. Not signed in his presence. Not filed by Dad himself. Not retrieved from a safe or lockbox. Submitted. That one word changed everything. I read the email 5 times. Then I saved it. Printed it. Put it in a folder. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Marcus. Hey, he said, his voice tight. Why are you emailing the Executor? I just had a question. About what? The will. There was a pause. It's done. Let it go. I'm just trying to understand. There's nothing to understand. It was Dad's decision. Then there's no reason I can't ask a few questions. He hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone. Marcus had never hung up on me before. He was scared. A week passed. Marcus called again. This time, his voice was softer. Concerned. Even. Look, I know this has been hard on you. But dragging it out won't help anyone. Let's just move forward. For the sake of peace. I stayed quiet. Dad was clear about what he wanted, Marcus continued. The paperwork was filed months before he went into the hospital. Everything was in order. I wrote that down. Months before the hospital. I didn't know you were involved in filing his will, I said carefully. I wasn't involved. I just helped him organize things. He was getting forgetful. Another note. Marcus helped organize. That was good of you, I said. He relaxed. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. We said goodbye. I hung up and stared at my notes. Marcus had just told me the will was filed before Dad's final hospitalization. But Dad had been in and out of the hospital for nearly a year. Which time did Marcus mean? He didn't realize what he'd revealed. But I did. I started keeping a timeline. Dates. Conversations. Every detail. Diane hosted a family dinner 2 weeks later. I almost didn't go. But Keith insisted. It'll look bad if you don't show up, he said. So I went. The table was full, Marcus, his wife Vanessa, Keith's sister, a few cousins. Everyone acting normal. Like nothing had happened. Diane served roast chicken and smiled too much. Halfway through dinner, she started talking about Dad. He was so fragile at the end, she said. It was good someone was there to help him organize his affairs. I looked up. What do you mean? Oh, you know. Paperwork. Documents. He could barely hold a pen. The table went quiet. I didn't realize you were involved with his documents, I said slowly. Well, someone had to be. She waved her hand. Marcus was busy, so I helped sort through things while your father was weak. Keith's fork clattered against his plate. Mom, maybe we shouldn't. Shouldn't what? I asked. Diane looked annoyed. I was just helping. It's not a crime to care for someone. But she wasn't supposed to be involved. Dad barely knew her. She had no legal standing. The room stayed silent. Marcus stared at his plate. Vanessa excused herself to the bathroom. I didn't say another word. I just filed it away. The next morning, I drove to the bank. The one Dad had used for 40 years. The one where he kept his safe deposit box. The manager recognized me. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you. I need to ask about my father's safe deposit box. She checked her records. It hasn't been opened since before his passing. My heart started pounding. Are you sure? Positive. The last access was 14 months ago. 14 months. Before he got really sick. Before he went into the hospital. Who accessed it? Your father. Alone. I thanked her and left. If the safe deposit box hadn't been opened, Then where did the will they used come from? Not from the bank. Not from Dad's lockbox. So where? The narrative Marcus and Diane had built just cracked a little wider. I stopped trying to explain myself. Stopped asking Marcus questions. Stopped arguing with Keith. Instead, I filed a formal request through the probate court for copies of all submitted documents. No accusations. No tears. Just paperwork. Keith asked what I was doing. Making sure everything was handled correctly, I said. You're wasting time. Maybe. But I wasn't. I was shifting. From victim to strategist. From someone things happened to, into someone who made things happen. The court took 3 weeks to process my request. Every day felt like a year. Keith grew colder. Diane stopped inviting me to dinners. Marcus sent me a text, "This is embarrassing for everyone." I didn't reply. Then, one afternoon, an envelope arrived. Thick. Official. My hand shook as I opened it. I spread the documents across the kitchen table. The will. The witness signatures. The notary seal, or what was supposed to be a notary seal. I pulled out old birthday cards from Dad. Letters he'd written me over the years. Checks he'd signed. I laid them next to the will. The signature was close. Very close. But it wasn't right. The capital letters leaned differently. The loops were tighter. The pen pressure was uneven, like someone had traced it slowly instead of signing naturally. My chest tightened. And there, at the bottom, witness signatures. Marcus Anderson. Diane Anderson. My brother had witnessed a will that cut me out completely. My mother-in-law had signed as a witness to an estate she had no connection to. I sat there, staring at the papers, feeling betrayal settle into my bones. Then I remembered something. A woman from church, Mrs. Callahan. She'd worked in probate for 30 years before retiring. I called her that night. Mrs. Callahan invited me over for tea. Her living room smelled like lavender and old books. I showed her the documents. She put on her reading glasses and studied them carefully. Copies, she said after a while. These are all copies. Does that matter? In court. Absolutely. Copies are weak. Originals decide everything. She pointed to the witness line. This is a problem. Your brother had a direct financial interest. That's a conflict. Any judge would question it. So this might not hold up. If you have the original will, and it's different, this doesn't stand a chance. Hope flickered in my chest. Small, cautious, but real. Where would the original be? I asked. She looked at me kindly. Where did your father keep important things? I thought about it. Then I remembered. The safe deposit box. I went back to the bank the next day. This time, I brought Dad's death certificate and my identification. The manager helped me access the box. Inside was a large envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. The original will. Notarized. Signed in blue ink. Dated 3 years before Dad died. I scanned the pages. My name was there. 50% to me. 50% to Marcus. Equal. I sat down right there in the small private room and cried. Not from joy. From relief. Dad hadn't abandoned me. He hadn't chosen Marcus over me. Someone had lied. I wiped my eyes and reached back into the box. There was another envelope underneath. Smaller. Addressed to me in Dad's handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. The letter was 2 pages long. Dad's handwriting, unmistakable. My dearest daughter. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I can't be there to protect you from what might come next. I've heard things. Suggestions that I should update my will. Pressure from people who think they know what's best for me. I won't name names, but you'll know who I mean. So I'm putting the original here, where it's safe. Where no one can change it or replace it. If anyone tells you I left you nothing, they're lying. Don't believe them. Stand firm. You were always the strong one, even when you didn't know it. I love you. I'm proud of you. Don't let them rewrite the truth. Dad. I folded the letter carefully and held it against my chest. His voice was right there. Clear. Loving. Unmistakable. He'd known. He'd seen it coming. And he'd protected me the only way he could. I put everything back in my bag and left the bank. Straight to Mr. Wallace's office. Mr. Wallace looked up when I walked in. Surprise flickered across his face. I need to submit something, I said. I placed the original will on his desk. Then Dad's letter. He picked up the will slowly. Studied it. Compared it to the copy in his file. His face changed. The color drained. He sat back in his chair. This is notarized, he said quietly. Yes. And the signatures are original. Yes. He looked at me. Really looked at me. Why didn't you bring this sooner? I didn't know it existed until now. He nodded slowly. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a legal pad. Once an original is submitted, I'm required to disclose any discrepancies. This changes everything. His tone shifted. Professional. Serious. This wasn't family drama anymore. This was law. He started making notes. I'll need to issue notices to all parties. There will likely be a hearing. I understand. This won't be easy. I know. He looked at me with something like respect. I'll begin the process immediately. I left his office feeling the power shift quietly beneath my feet. My phone exploded that night. Calls. Texts. Voicemails. Marcus, what the hell are you doing? Diane, this is disgusting. You're tearing this family apart over greed. Keith came home and slammed the door. You need to stop this before it gets ugly. I stayed calm. I submitted the original will. That's all. You're embarrassing me, Keith said. My mother is furious. Your mother lied. She was helping. She witnessed a fake will. He didn't deny it. Nobody did. That was the thing. Not one person said the documents were wrong. They just said I should stop. Marcus called again. I let it ring. Then Mr. Wallace emailed. A hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. I forwarded the email to Marcus without a message. The panic had begun. 2 weeks before the hearing, Marcus showed up at my door. Can we talk? He asked. His voice was softer now. Almost kind. I let him in. He sat on the couch and rubbed his face. This has gotten out of hand. I said nothing. Look, I'll admit, things got messy. But we can fix this without court. I'll give you something. Not half, but 30%. We'll call it settled. Quietly. 30% of what's mine. Of the estate. I'm entitled to 50. But the legal fees. I'm willing to pay them. He stood up. You're being unreasonable. I'm trying to be fair here. Then honor the original will. It's not that simple. It is, though. He stared at me like I'd become someone he didn't recognize. You're really going to drag us all through court? You dragged me out of my inheritance. I'm just correcting it. He left without another word. I'd refused their deal without raising my voice. Without anger. Just clarity. They hadn't expected that. That night, Keith sat me down. I need to tell you something, he said. I waited. I knew. His voice cracked. I knew something wasn't right. Marcus told me weeks before Dad died that the will was being adjusted. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to get involved. My stomach turned. You knew. I thought maybe your dad really did want it that way. You didn't think to ask me. I didn't want to upset you. So you stayed quiet while I got erased. He looked at the floor. My mom said it was for the best. That you'd be fine. That Marcus deserved it because he'd been managing Dad's care. Your mom isn't part of this family. She's my mother. And I'm your wife. He didn't say anything. I realized then, he'd chosen her over me. Over the truth. The betrayal was deeper than money. Deeper than Marcus or Diane. It was Keith. The person who was supposed to stand beside me. I think you should stay somewhere else for a while, I said. He nodded. He didn't fight. He packed a bag and left. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Marcus sat with his attorney, a sharp woman in a grey suit. I sat with Mrs. Callahan, who'd agreed to help me navigate the process. The opposing attorney stood and argued that Dad had been confused in his final months. That stress and medication had clouded his judgment. That the later will, though not original, reflected his true intent. She was good. Persuasive. For a moment, the judge seemed to consider it. He leaned back, frowning. My heart sank. Marcus looked confident. Diane sat behind him, arms crossed. I felt the room tipping away from me. Then the judge spoke. Does the defendant have any supporting documents to verify the decedent's intent beyond the submitted copy? The attorney hesitated. We have witness testimony. From interested parties. Yes, Your Honor. The judge's frown deepened. I'll need independent verification. Medical records. Correspondence. Something objective. She had nothing. The judge turned to me. And you have the original? Yes, Your Honor. Along with a signed letter from the decedent? Yes. He nodded slowly. I'd like to see that letter. Mrs. Callahan handed Dad's letter to the bailiff. The judge read it silently. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. When he finished, he read it aloud. Dad's words filled the room. Calm. Loving. Clear. Don't let them rewrite the truth. I watched Marcus's face go pale. Diane looked away. The judge set the letter down carefully. This is a clear statement of intent, he said. Written in the decedent's own hand, expressing concern about potential manipulation of his estate. Marcus's attorney tried to interject, but the judge held up his hand. The original will is notarized, properly witnessed by disinterested parties, and supported by contemporaneous documentation. The later version is a copy, witnessed by individuals with direct financial interest, and contradicts the decedent's explicit written concerns. He paused. I'm inclined to uphold the original. The room shifted. I felt it. The air changed. Marcus stared at the table. Diane's hands clenched in her lap. The judge wasn't done. However, I have concerns about how this case was handled initially. I'm pausing proceedings to review the executor's actions. Mr. Wallace stood. Your Honor, may I speak? Mr. Wallace stepped forward. He looked tired. Older than I remembered. Your Honor, I need to admit something. The judge gestured for him to continue. I was pressured to expedite the probate process. I was told the family was in agreement and that delays would cause unnecessary hardship. I accepted the submitted will without requiring the original. That was an error on my part. Marcus's attorney shot to her feet. Your Honor, this is... Let him finish, the judge said. Mr. Wallace continued. I should have insisted on seeing the original. I should have questioned the witness signatures. I failed in my duties, and I take full responsibility. The room was silent. The submitted will should never have been accepted as valid, Mr. Wallace said. I'm formally withdrawing my certification of that document. Marcus's face went red. Diane looked like she might cry. The false will had just collapsed completely. The judge made notes. Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Wallace. We'll address your conduct separately. For now, I'm moving forward with a final ruling. The judge took a brief recess. 15 minutes that felt like hours. When he returned, the courtroom stood. I've reviewed all materials, he began. The original will, dated 3 years prior to the decedent's death, is legally sound. It was executed properly, witnessed appropriately, and stored securely. He looked at Marcus. The later version, submitted as a copy, lacks legal standing. It was witnessed by parties with clear conflicts of interest and contradicts explicit instructions left by the decedent. He paused. Therefore, I'm invalidating the copy and upholding the original will. My breath caught. The estate will be redistributed according to the terms of the original document, 50% to each child. Relief crashed over me. But the judge wasn't finished. Additionally, due to the irregularities in this case, I'm reducing the defendant's share by 15% to cover court costs and penalties for improper submission of fraudulent documents. Marcus stood. That's not. His attorney pulled him back down. The gavel came down. Ruling is final. I walked out of the courtroom into bright sunlight. Mrs. Callahan squeezed my shoulder. You did it, she said. I nodded, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. Marcus pushed past me without a word. Diane followed, her face streaked with angry tears. Keith was waiting by my car. Can we talk? He asked. Not now. Please. I'm sorry. I should have. You should have stood by me. You didn't. He looked broken. But I couldn't fix that. I got in my car and drove home alone. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the legal documents. 50%. My father's love, validated. His wishes, honored. But the cost had been high. My brother wouldn't speak to me. My marriage was over. My mother-in-law would hate me forever. Justice wasn't clean. It wasn't simple. But it was mine. In the weeks that followed, the family fractured completely. Marcus's wife Vanessa sent me a polite text, I'm sorry for everything. But Marcus himself stayed silent. Diane told anyone who'd listen that I'd destroyed the family over greed. Most people didn't believe her. Keith moved back in with his mother. We didn't file for divorce immediately, but we both knew it was coming. Cousins who'd taken Marcus's side went quiet. A few reached out with awkward apologies. I accepted them, but the relationships were different now. The money was redistributed. I received what was rightfully mine. I used some of it to pay Mrs. Callahan, though she tried to refuse. I donated a portion to a charity Dad had loved. The rest, I saved. Victory felt heavy. Not loud. Not celebratory. Just present. I'd won, but the cost was a family that would never be whole again. Still, I didn't regret it. Dad had asked me to stand firm. So I had. 3 months later, I signed the divorce papers. Keith didn't contest anything. We divided our assets quietly, without drama. He apologized again. I accepted. But I didn't forgive. Not yet. Some betrayals run too deep. I moved into a smaller house across town. Painted the walls soft blue. Planted flowers in the front yard. I took only what was rightfully mine from the estate. I didn't chase revenge. I didn't demand apologies from Marcus or Diane. I just moved forward. At night, I'd sit on my new porch with tea and think about Dad. About his letter. About how he'd known exactly what would happen and had protected me anyway. I kept his letter in a frame on my desk. Some people thought I should have let it go. That fighting for the inheritance made me look greedy or bitter. But they didn't understand. It wasn't about the money. It was about being seen. Being valued. Being remembered. Dad had seen me. Even when others tried to erase me. That was worth fighting for. 6 months after the court ruling, I returned to the bank one last time. I closed the safe deposit box. There was nothing left inside. The manager smiled. Everything settled. Yes, I said. Everything's settled. I walked out into the autumn air, leaves crunching under my feet. The estate was finalized. The legal battles were over. The truth was on record. Marcus had tried to rewrite history. Diane had tried to manipulate it. Keith had tried to ignore it. But the truth had been there all along, locked away, waiting. And when it finally came out, it couldn't be denied. I thought about Dad's final words in his letter, don't let them rewrite the truth. I hadn't. The story was over. The real story. The one that mattered. They'd said it was settled, until the truth finally had its turn. And now, at last, it really was. Settled. For real.